Welcome everyone to the City of Beaumont Committee of the Whole meeting, June 16th, 2026. Deputy Mayor Stephen Van Newkirk, committee chair tonight. So I'll start with our land acknowledgement. As we gather here in Beaumont, we pause to acknowledge the land we're blessed to live and work on and to honor those who came before us. We value the enduring relationships with the French pioneers and Indigenous peoples who continue to share their history, knowledge, and culture with our community. We're also thankful for the generations whose dedication and faith helped shape this community into the vibrant city it is today. With that, we'll be looking for Councillor Hyde.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that the June 16, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you for that. Any questions or debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. And that passes 6-0. Now we'll move on to item number 3, adoption of the minutes. I have a committee member that is willing to move the adoption of the minutes. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that the May 19th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns, or debate on that item? Seeing none, we'll call the question. And that passes 6-0. Thank you for that. And with that, we'll move right along to open forum, item number 4. Clerk, do we have anyone registered for open forum tonight?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. See a seat at the presentation table.
That'd be great. Thank you for that. And if you just press the big button at the bottom, so green is asking to speak and red gives you the floor to speak. So we'll give a 5 minute timer going here, and then so you'll use your 5 minutes very diligently, and then following that, we'll open up the floor for council to ask any brief high-level questions. And just a reminder, we haven't got the childcare report yet to even ask questions on, so just to ground any of the discussion and questions and stuff. So the floor is yours, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and councillors. Oh, it's really loud. I want to first start off by acknowledging that I understand that you're very early in this review process of the ELCC and SAS, and that later you will hear a presentation. This is the topic I wish to speak on today. My name is Amanda Austin, and I'm a citizen of Beaumont, a parent in the centre since 2018, with children currently in both the ELCC and SAS. As well as I'm a fellow professional. I've been through it all with this centre from first steps to many. Other big life milestones. I also went through the last childcare review where I was a very active advocate. Through that process, I gained a lot of experience during collaborations with other parents, the review company Grant Thornton, as well as meetings with the mayor and councillors at the time. Tonight, I am speaking as a representative for many of the parents in the room, as well as many who could not make it tonight. The Beaumont Child Care Centre is more than just a daycare to Beaumont and the families whose children attend there. It's a cornerstone for community connection and engagement, an opportunity for families in Beaumont to deeply connect and belong to our city. The ELCC and SAS have become a family to us, and we are fully committed to collaborating during this process in a way that values the centre for the 45 years it's been a cornerstone in our community. We would like to extend an invitation to work collaboratively with all of you as you navigate this review. We look forward to meeting with you either collectively or individually to share why not only the ELCC and SAS are important to the hundreds of parents, children, and employees, but also why it's critical to our city. While we recognize the challenge faced with balancing the city finances, I believe there's value in discussing the wider impact of a municipally owned childcare program. While their primary purpose is to provide care, they also support affordability across the city by increasing choice for families, providing a publicly operated, not-for-profit alternative within the childcare sector, which for over the years has helped to regulate fees within our city. Further to this, the ELCC and SAS add value as a high standard of care, both in our community and beyond, to practicum programs, supporting the goal of creating a safe, inclusive, and vibrant community. In the interest of time, I'll limit my remarks to those two considerations, which just represent some of the many reasons why this centre remains an important service within our community. In closing, I want to say that we care about this community and this program. We want to be a part of the conversation, and we welcome the opportunity to sit down together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the presentation, and I would say that the presentation is well received on this side, and council looks forward to all of the conversation that's going to happen and all the collaboration that's going to happen as we work through this. Open it up to any questions, clarifications from council at all. Councillor Penrod.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks for your presentation, Amanda. Since you've had such a long-standing relationship with the two centres, just wondering if you could speak to how services.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there is definitely some changes that occurred, right? More daycares, which was definitely something in the last review that we went through. Now, more daycares doesn't necessarily mean quality, which is part of the reason why I spoke to the quality of the centre, right? As myself, I have my level 3 childcare and have gone since back to do education and teach grade 1 now. And the Beaumont daycare was up there with the Grant McEwen daycare, and I believe it still is. And that was something that I was really proud to be a part of, to know people that taught there that I went to school with and that still teach there, right? That I think that speaks to the quality of care. And I also think it's really cool when we hear of like people whose kids now go to the daycare. Like, how wild is that? Who probably, sorry to some of the teachers, maybe have taught all of them, right? Because the staff have been there for so long. And I think that speaks to it, because when we have a center that has a high turnover rate, that is not a good indication of quality of care, right? We want people who want to be at their job and want to stay in that role, right? And as an educator, the quality that I've seen is second to none. There's nowhere else I would rather have my kids. So while I say very hesitantly that there are more daycares now than there was, that doesn't necessarily mean quality. So I think that that's a big part of the conversation. And then I'm just thinking in terms of differences past. And then I guess the only other one I could speak to is in terms of cost with the affordability grant. I think that that does layer in some complexities that weren't there prior, right? I don't know all of the ins and outs, but I will learn all of those. But that is something that is wildly different than like my twins. When they went there, we were paying like over $2,000, right? Whereas now that cost of childcare is far different, but lots of those things are, let's say, out of our control, right? In terms of that cost, but that was not something at the time that was available for my twins when they went there, that is now available for my little guy who's at the ELCC. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and if I might ask just one more. Just wondering, you kind of started down that path, but just wondering if you could speak, and I understand there's a lot of people in the room and you're just speaking to your own experience, but
yeah,
because you've kind of rooted yourself as being there for a long time, hopefully, at least for me, your words carry a little bit of weight. Just wondering if you can speak to how the service has changed or not over the past, since 2018 that you mentioned, as we've had a couple layers of cost recovery policies kind of put on, and that's changed. Has that affected quality of service or types of folks that can access the
No, you know what I'll say is that there's one thing that has never changed, and that is the quality of care. I know that everybody that I speak for and everybody behind me could attest to that. There has been no quality of care difference, right? It was gold star when my twins were there, and there is a reason why my third baby is at the child care center. I can say this with my whole heart, that there has never been a day that I have ever questioned where my children go to daycare, right? And I think that that speaks to it, especially as someone who went to school for that, right? That I know what to look for, let's say, and never has there been a day I've questioned it, both back in 2018 all the way through to now, and I would recommend it to anybody. So no, there's never been a moment that I've been like, oh, this service has dropped because of cost recovery. Absolutely not. The teachers that taught my twins teach my little guy, right? There's something to be said about that. That has never changed, and the heart and thought that they put into their programming is first class.
Thank you. I'll just echo the chair's words. Thank you for the proactive display of being willing to collaborate and work together as we search for solutions on this file.
Thank you, Councillor Penrod. Up next, I've got Councillor Hyde, followed by Councillor Murray. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Amanda, this takes a lot, but this is obviously a very passionate, emotional gathering here this evening, and I love the fact that people come together from your community to express these type of things. And this is obviously a multi-generational place for people to grow. So it's not lost upon us up here that these decisions weigh very heavily as we're going forward. It's not just another line item. It's obvious that this is something that people feel passionate about. And whenever you're dealing with those type of things, where you have these type of passions, you really have to think about how it's going to affect your community. So that is not lost on us whatsoever. And I just want to thank everybody for coming into the room here today. And we will be carefully considering everything. Just you have my, my total heart on that one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyde. Councillor Murray.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I know it can take a lot of guts to come up here and talk to us, so we appreciate it. But when you talk about the quality of care, can you just give me some ideas about what is sort of the top of mind when you talk? I know you mentioned a little bit about that consistency in staffing and programming, but can you just give me like a few more ideas of what we should be considering as well when we were looking at that?
So I think that one of the things that I feel that the ELCC and SAS do great is there's many things. The top two would be safety. I don't think that I've ever questioned the safety. I'm not even gonna say I don't think. I have never questioned the safety of my children in their care. And that is not a statement that can be made in the childcare sector, right? Like there is so much trust that goes into our babies being in someone else's care full time. So if safety is sort of my number one in terms of that's what we want is for our kids to be safe, right? And then the second is just that program quality. Like it is not a cookie cutter program where we're practicing just fine motor by cutting shapes and putting them or whatever that might be, or doing just tasks on a table, right? When my son comes in saying that he is Spider-Man for the day, and that is what, all of a sudden, the room transforms into a world that meets exactly where he's at. And he comes home as a almost 3-year-old, empowered that he was Spidey and he took down everybody with his webs today. Now, while that's like a silly thing, for him, that's the world, right? I don't need him right now to practice his ABCs. I want him to be a leader in his room. I want him to be building language. I want him to be feeling like he is the coolest kid ever. And I think that one of the things that both programs do, and that is the same but very different for my twins in the SAS, is that they feel like leaders in their room. And I think that that carries more weight than even I realized in going into this parenting journey. And so safety would be one, and then the quality of program is unreal, how they are able to put their own sort of agenda to the side and just go with what the kids need, what they want, and then foster it from the ground up, right? Building in activities where they don't even know they're learning because they're Spider-Man, and that's what they want to do today, right? Mm-hmm. But they're still learning, and I think that it's just a beautiful thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jostling the buttons around here to make sure we got the right mics on. Yeah, thank you for your time tonight to speak. Oh, Anthony, you want to jump in? Okay. Councillor Colesmith, you're up.
Took me a minute. I had to formulate the thought.
No problem.
I appreciate your presentation. Thank you. And you spoke to the differences and what sets this program apart. Can you, this may be unfair, but can you speak, what do you believe is the enabler that allows that difference between this program and other programs? What is the thing or things that enables that difference?
There's so many. I think that part of it comes from staff retention. I think that that's a huge thing, right? Like so many centers cannot say that they have staff for over 20 years. I think that that's a beautiful thing, and people who want to be there, who want to learn. And I just think what they pour into their staff, right? Like if you're willing to pour into your staff and do training and build from each other and take on practicum students to learn new ideas and be a learner, like a lifelong learner. I think that there is so much value in that. And I think that for centers, for example, who might not have that staff retention, I think it's just really hard to pour into your staff to build this incredible of a program, right? If people are rotating so often. So I don't know if that speaks to it, but I think that that's a huge thing.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing no other requests to speak, thank you for your time. And we're going to move on to AI, and then we'll be jostling back to childcare review and item 5.2. So thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 5.1, the Artificial Intelligence Use Council Policy, and look for administration to see who's going to speak to that. Sounds good. And I'll turn you on. You're good to go. There. No, you're good now. Yeah,
Good now?
Yeah, red means good.
All right.
Usually green means go, but red means good on these mics, so, yeah. All right, passed over to you.
Okay, thank you and good evening, committee. I'm Jamie McGregor, Manager of Information Technology, and I'm here to speak to the Committee of the Whole report, which is in response to Council's motion from March 24th, which directed administration to bring forward an Artificial Intelligence Use Council policy by the end of Q2. Tonight, I'll briefly cover three things: the interim guidance we put in place for staff, the council policy itself, and the broader governance work that supports it. What we're asking of committee tonight is general input and feedback on the proposed policy before it comes forward at the next regular council meeting on June the 23rd. AI tools are now built into everyday software and online services, analysis, and help deliver services, but they also introduce risks around privacy, information security, accuracy, accountability, and those risks have to be managed in a way that's consistent with our obligations under the Protection of Privacy Act and with the public's trust in the city. Many municipalities are wrestling with this question right now. The approach in front of you positions Beaumont to use these tools responsibly rather than reacting after the fact. Following council's motion, administration issued interim guidance to all staff and contractors, and in plain terms, it permits reasonable use of AI tools with clear guardrails. Personal, confidential, or sensitive information doesn't go into them. Staff need to be aware that many platforms store data outside of Canada, and model training and data sharing settings are to be disabled. All AI-generated content must be validated before use. AI is not to be relied on for legal, financial, or compliance decisions without proper review, and approval is required before integrating AI tools with city systems. Subsequent to the motion, we've also taken two practical steps beyond the guidance itself. The city has acquired AI literacy training that can be delivered to staff, so people using the tools understand both the opportunities and the limits before they're given access. And we've also started using a technology called Cloud App Discovery, which gives us visibility into web-based AI tools that could be in use across the organization without our knowledge. So we're not just setting rules, we have a way to train people on them and to see what's actually happening in our network. The interim guidance remains in effect until the policy and supporting directives are in place. The proposed policy as attachment 1 is intentionally governance-based. It sets council's high-level expectations for transparent, secure, ethical, human-centered, and compliant use of AI. The detailed operational rules for staff, contractors, and service providers sit with administration and will be delivered through an administrative directive and supporting procedures. The policy will guide those operational decisions, and the resulting rules will be incorporated into the city's privacy management program. So AI governance is integrated with our broader privacy framework rather than sitting off to the side. And I'll briefly touch on the key elements. The policy statement commits the city to using AI responsibly while protecting municipal information and maintaining public confidence. The scope covers council, city employees, volunteers, and contracted service providers. And the guiding principles are responsible use, privacy, security, human oversight, accountability, transparency, fairness, equity, compliance, and risk management. The most important of those being human oversight. The city remains accountable for every decision and outcome supported by AI. The policy has been through legal review, which confirms it aligns with governance best practices and returned no recommended revisions. On the financial side, developing and adopting this policy is being handled with internal resources and approved budget. Costs for an enterprise-level AI solution will come forward separately through the 2027 budget process with risk assessments and implementation options as Council has directed. On risk, the biggest risk is actually the absence of governance. Unmanaged use of AI tools have potential for unauthorized collection or use or disclosure of personal information, as well as reliance on inaccurate content. Also, data being stored outside of Canada without our knowledge. The policy, the interim guidance, and supporting directives work together to mitigate that. And to close, the proposed policy responds directly to the Council's March 24th motion. It's been through legal review. It sets a governance foundation that the Administrative Directive and Privacy Management Program and the Enterprise AI Evaluation will build on. We're seeking committee's input and feedback tonight, and we'll incorporate that into the policy before it comes forward to a regular Council meeting for approval. And I welcome any discussion and happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you for that, and I'll look to committee members for questions. And I see that I've got Councillor Colesmith, followed by Councillor Penrod. There we go.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for this. So I read through it, and I think overall it's good. It's not harmful in any way, but it does, in my opinion, I think there are a few things that maybe are missing from it. It lacks a definition of what AI use is specifically allowed or prohibited. And I would normally expect to see like risk tiers and use categories, use case categories, I think would be a valid addition. Everything is delegated to administration. It doesn't appear to give them the tools or authority to deal with that. There's no framework for how they're supposed to, an AI inventory, mandatory risk assessments, procurement rules, audit processes, training requirements. I didn't see anything about requirement for public disclosure in the case of an event. And I would expect a lot of the risk would come from, like cloud vendors or SaaS tools embedded with AI, chatbots, that sort of thing. Like maybe that could be addressed. And the exceptions clause, I thought, was really broad. I'd like to see that narrowed down, if possible.
Okay, appreciate those comments for now, and we'll move on to Councillor Penrod.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Goldsmith. I can always rely on you to bring the heat on the technical pieces and really zero in on technical aspects of these. I don't bring that skill to the table, but I wanted to zoom out, and if I could, Chair, ask one high-level question and two specific questions. We don't get Mr. McGregor here in front of us every day, let alone with a room full of people. And so at the risk of sounding like a Luddite, I just want to kind of ask, I mean, everybody's talking about AI these days, and you mentioned in your report and here again tonight that the number one risk is using it without governance, but maybe the number one risk is using it at all. And seems like everybody's integrating AI somehow in their workflow these days. Just wonder if you could speak for the public tonight just to some of the practical examples of where AI has been or could be deployed across the organization in service to resident services, to improve services or to drive financial efficiency.
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, thank you for the question. AI is, it's a very broad topic. I think when people say AI in 2026, they think of chatbots like ChatGPT and others. The reality of AI has been around for decades. Machine learning has been used to predict rainfall and crop cycles and parasites. So I would say from a practical sense, if you use the literal definition of AI, it's already integrated into many of our tools. So getting away from it is not, not practical to do that. I think NOR is inventorying every single possible use case for AI for the city. So I think we will improve our ability to, inventory how we're using AI and for what use cases. And, the possibilities are literally endless. Everything from summarizing documentation to coming up with financial calculations quicker than you might by doing it manually. Human resources recruiting, going through stacks of hundreds of resumes to surface maybe the prime candidates are a couple of examples. But you hit on it as well, Councillor, is it's being integrated into everyday tools through general updates from these cloud vendors. So it's becoming part of basically everything that we do.
Thank you for that answer, and glad in that case where it's just a practical tool in daily use that we're getting some governance in place and better something initially, even if it's not perfect, and work towards honing it as we go forward. So 2 specific questions. I'll echo Councillor Colesmith's comment that exception clause is pretty broad. I want to zero in on the start of it. Exceptions to this policy may be permitted. Who decides, and what mechanisms do we have in place across the city to ensure those decisions are consistent across city departments?
We envision a screening process for all platforms and applications. Actually, the Protection of Privacy Act that we're working towards compliance actually has separate requirements of municipalities to perform certain impact assessments around privacy and security anyway. So outside of our AI policies, we will actually have other compliance reasons why we need to be assessing those applications as well. I'm sorry if I lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. So I'll try to feed it back to you. So in that example, ADIA and POPA both kind of ask organizations to designate officers in charge of that aspect of governance. And so just wondering if this policy, especially around exceptions and when and if exception might be tolerated, if this policy would sort of envision someone being designated to make those decisions across, or is it something that's designated to every manager?
I would think that an administrative directive would define a procedure for assessing platforms and applications and defining a process for which exceptions could be tracked and logged, most likely through the Director of Information Technology being the approver of exceptions to those directives.
Yeah, so then you know what my nervousness is going to be, because once it gets to the administrative directive level, then we don't have a lot of visibility as council, right? So all I'm doing tonight is flagging together with a colleague that that exception clause seems pretty broad. You can kind of drive a bus through it, and it'd be good to have a little bit more visibility on what controls may be in place, to knowing that this field is changing daily, right? And so we have to have some flexibility to drive some of those benefits that our organization can get from these tools. But just to have a sense of the policy is only so as good as its enforceability. And if we've got exceptions for everything, then what's the point of the policy? Last piece, I noticed that date of review is Q2 2027. That's 1 year. I think our normal practice is 3. How did we come up with that timeline?
Just based on the agility of the technology. You look at the news and there's some new innovation, something's happening on a fairly aggressive cadence in the space. So we thought this, to the point that you made, it's a moving target. We thought that a more aggressive review cycle for this policy would be appropriate, so we can, keep pace with the technology as it changes.
Thank you. Fully support that decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Penrod, and the goal of tonight is to get that feedback, so it's less about timers right now and more about good feedback, and thank you both for that. I was going to also point out the Q2 2027 being, big thumbs up on that, because things are moving fast. So Mayor, we'll go over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. McGregor, thank you so much. So you mentioned in your presentation about certain AI types, categories, and their storage or offsite in different places. So I want to echo what my colleagues have just said about the exception in terms of, I think that it would be helpful in the policy if we could put something in there that says these particular ones are not something that we as a municipality would endorse to be used here because of those factors, because of the risk of the storage being in a place that we can't access, or whether or not there's a proprietary platform that we have or customized. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Through the chair to the mayor. So one option would be to define use cases that wouldn't be appropriate. POPA itself is fairly restrictive in where public sector organizations can store data. So it's already pretty tough to store data outside of Canada as it is. And risk assessments are required to really understand that cloud provider's obligation to you as their customer to protect your data and to ensure that it's not accessible by maybe a jurisdiction outside of your control. So, you know, I envision our procedure for vetting and approving cloud tools to take those things into consideration, but absolutely welcome your feedback on having that maybe lifted up into the policy.
Sure. Well, even thinking at kind of an everyday use like ChatGPT, cloud, those ones which, you know, someone might go to type in some stuff just to get some information, whatever, it's still a use, it becomes a habit. So that's more what I'm thinking about in terms of things that are more on maybe a granular, lower level in terms of use that still could put us at risk.
Yeah, chatbot tools, you know, people can do anything. It's you need administrative controls, training in order to help guide the users and how to use them in safe ways. It's tough to prevent all possible use cases in many cases, although there are technologies that give us some control over, you know, for example, staff members putting personally identifiable information into the tools. We can, in some cases, control that. But yeah, a big piece of ensuring that staff use them properly is training and awareness.
Yeah. One last thing is, you're probably aware of what the government of Alberta has been doing in this whole area as well, in terms of their robust research and implementation and testing through their own system, which is similar to ours on a different scale, and of course, organization and governance. Is there anything there that we can learn from as well, or maybe you've already tapped into that?
Absolutely, we have. We looked through their existing policies and guidance thoroughly in support of developing our own policies as well. So we're definitely looking to them to help us understand what good might look like from the provincial level, and then you know, make it fit Beaumont as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Mr. McGregor.
Councillor Hyde, over to you.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. All of my colleagues have nailed a lot of the questions, but as I look at the front of this document, it says, get an AI-generated summary of this PDF. So constant, all the time, it's always popping up. You go to Google, it's AI. You go to anywhere, it's AI-generated questions. So I think the biggest thing on, just to really take this down, is making sure that the public is aware that we are working on AI policy to try to make sure that everything is secure as possible. And I think that's the point that we need to get through, is that have we uncovered every place, every sticky place that this could happen, and how are we going to make sure that we keep a lid on it and keep up with it? So my thoughts is, how do you keep up with AI? How do you keep up with the constant changing and make sure that we're protecting not just ourselves, but the citizens of Beaumont as well? I think that's the warranted question right there, is how are you going to do that?
Yeah, I think the most pragmatic way of doing that, Councillor Hyde, is having operating procedures built into your operations that require review of platforms and applications at specific trigger points. So, you know, whether it's an update cycle or you're doing a refresh or a procurement, having those opportunities to assess those applications and see what's changed, you know, since the last time maybe it's been assessed, I think is a pragmatic way of starting to, you know, eat that elephant a bite out of the time, because we have to start from somewhere. And as you said, you know, we need to take a step in governance, and we can mature and grow as we go on the journey.
Okay, thanks very much for your presentation. I hope that AI doesn't replace me anytime soon, but you never know. Maybe the next council will have 2 chatbots on it. I don't know, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, just looking to see if Legislative Services wants to chime in on that one a bit.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do just have a couple of comments. I'm hearing council speak, and so a lot of the comments that are being made, that is actually covered under the privacy management program that we've been working on. There was a presentation that was made to council a couple of weeks ago that came through that LLS has been working really hard on and implementing. We went live on June 11th with that. There is legislation in place that we could mention into the council policy that we do follow. We would not want to align a policy because of course it wouldn't trump the legislation that we have, but there is privacies. I know Councillor Penrod talked about the designation of the privacy officer. That is myself. Council did that by bylaw at the meeting 2 weeks ago, so I am responsible for the privacy of our residents in Beaumont as well as council and staff. So a lot of those comments that you have been made are covered under the legislation and within our PMP program.
That's great, thank you. That's reassuring. So with that, seeing no further requests to speak, yeah, we'll close off item 5.1 and we'll move on to item 5.2. Thank you for your time and diligence, and good luck in the AI atmosphere. Just give a moment here to get the room ready for item 5.2 for the presenters. Yeah, no pressure, take your time.
Thank you.
And as you guys are getting ready, we'll have administration, we'll have Paul Suter will kick things off tonight, and then we'll pass it over to the presenters. So,
good evening, Chair and committee members, members of the public, administration. My name is Paul Suter, Director of Community Services for the City of Beaumont. This evening, administration is here to present a report in response to a motion made December 9th of 2025 during the 2026 budget process. Administration engaged Urban Systems to prepare a report on some analysis of the fiscal realities of the Beaumont Child Care Program, some information on current market landscape, and some possible scenarios for Council's future consideration. With us this evening from Urban Systems is Christina Hopkins and Lucas Timms. We've got considerable bench strength from administration to support as needed. We have Shiko Rukovo, Manager of Family and Social Services, Laura Grenning, Child Care Supervisor, Jennifer Nisik, Director, Economic Development, Donna Montney, Director of People Services, and online we've got Jay Bahicek, Director of Finance. The recommended flow for the conversation this evening, Chair, would be administration presents the presentation, clarifying questions on the presentation and the report, anticipating there may be questions that are appropriate to respond to in a closed session. Administration would recommend those questions be tabled for a closed session later in this conversation. And with that, Chair, I'll turn it over to Christina and Lucas to run through their presentation.
yeah, thank you for that opening. And so just so Council is clear, Legislative Services will support the questions tonight. If there's anything that looks like it might be a question that would be better served in closed session due to those privacies required, then we'll look to have some support from both the presenters and the ample bench strength we have here tonight supporting the conversation. So with that, pass it over to you.
Perfect.
You got the clicker and all that stuff?
Yes, right here. Thank you.
Right on. Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. And thank you, Paul, for the introduction. Today, if I can move on to the next slide here. Today we have a few objectives of some information to walk you through. I would also like to encourage everybody participating in today's conversation to put on their curiosity hat. We're very much here to explore some of the implications and provide that information for good discussion. Of the operational context, we're going to talk a bit about just how the child care services operate in the context of Beaumont. We're also going to have a look at the financials based on comparison to the existing council policy and look at some of those changes over time. And we're going to walk through some potential scenarios for future consideration for child care services and explore some of those levers that might make some of those changes. I guess as a reminder, this was the motion provided by council, ultimately looking for provision of information on several different sources here. From looking at internal efficiencies, partnerships, outsourcing, cost recovery approaches, an exit strategy, or maintaining the status quo. Also, for the purposes of today's discussion, because we just want to make sure that we have common language, so when we're referring to Beaumont Childcare, we're referring to the municipally run childcare services, which includes the early learning childcare, ELCC, and school age site, or SAS. When we say cost recovery, that is as defined by the current council policy. So that's the percentage of expenses covered by revenue, with expenses as defined by council policy. When we say municipal subsidy, that is the dollar value difference between the total revenues collected and expenses incurred. So that's the dollar amount versus the cost recovery percentage. And more information to come about this later, there's the Canada-Alberta Early Learning and Childcare Agreement, which is a mouthful to say, so we're going to refer to that as the provincial agreement in this case. Yes, more information about that to come. Also wanted to revisit, I know a presentation that council you received in the fall about the level of service inventory, where childcare was identified as a discretionary service as per that review, which means the service responds to a particular community need based on positive business case or other specialized purpose. In that review, childcare was identified as a higher cost service with overall lower population served, and the recommendation at the time was to review discretionary and traditional services as part of good governance. So here we are, acting upon the previous work that has been done. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the operational context of childcare being ELCC and SAS. So both programs are regulated by the province of Alberta through the frameworks. This program started in 1980 when the Beaumont population was a total of 2,600 people and had no childcare options. So when it first opened, it opened with 29 spaces, which represented about 1.1% of the total population of Beaumont at the time. Things have changed since then, both in terms of population and number of childcare services available. There have been several previous reviews of the provision of childcare service with different methodologies and coverage. In 2006 with Hargreaves and Associates, 2009 in Breakwell Consulting, most recently in 2018 by Grant Thornton. As a response to the 2018 report, the city also prepared a childcare services business plan in 2023 with some action upon some of those recommendations. Also want to point out that the current program is partnered with the Kids Included program for access, support, and participation, which builds upon educators' skills, knowledge, and confidence for inclusion for all children in their care. The program also accesses support from Family Support of Children with Disabilities. And you have ongoing partnerships with Grant MacEwan University, Red Deer, Lethbridge, and Northlands Colleges to provide practicum placements. So you're also training the next generation of educators. That's just kind of general information. Wanted to highlight some very broad context changes since 2018. Certain economic indicators like the Consumer Price Index have increased at a greater rate than median family income. Additionally, there's been an increased cost of municipal service delivery across the board with overall decreased funding outside of municipal taxes, and that provincial agreement has also come into place since 2018, which does change some of the landscape. I mean, the overall theme here for municipalities is that costs have increased while revenues have not increased quite as much. So there's some tension that exists since 2018. There was a whole pandemic in that time as well to reflect upon. All right, as promised, there's some more information about the provincial agreement. So this came into effect in 2021, and the objective of this agreement was to move childcare costs for parents down to $10 a day over a certain period of time. So each province signed an agreement with the federal government because it is a federally funded program to subsidize some of those costs. It also introduced some fee caps for childcare providers. So a major contextual difference from when the last analysis was completed is that the City of Beaumont does not have as much of a lever to pull on what you can charge parents for children of kindergarten age and younger. So you are limited right now. I think the number is $326.25 per month per child, and that's the maximum parent fee. Then the provincial agreement covers the rest to a certain predefined amount. As of our most recent information, just from the end of last week, Alberta is working on preparing a new arrangement with Canada for the 27-28 fiscal year. Currently, details are unknown, and I believe administration may be able to speak to this more later, but there have been some conversations with the province, and not much has been learned from that. So, some more. Just here's how ELCC operates. So currently there are children between 12 months of age to kindergarten age, operates between 7 a.m. and 5:30 p.m., generally working hours. There are 88 licensed spaces, so that is the maximum capacity of ELCC, with five playrooms, 16 full-time educators, and some staff that are also shared with SAS as well. So there's staff that work between the two locations. At SAS, it's for children grades 1 to 6, so up to the age of 12, operates in the mornings before school and in the afternoons after school, as well as on non-school weekdays, like PD days. It operates in those bounds as well. It also operates all throughout the summer to provide care for kids as well. There's a total of 53 licensed spaces with 4 full-time educators, and then, as mentioned on the previous slides, those shared staff. So we have a couple of slides here just to show the relationship between ELCC and SAS, because the operations are, even though they're two separate locations, the operations are quite tied together. They are dependent on each other. So right now, licensed for up to 88 spaces at ELCC, SAS has 53 spaces, so your total licensed capacity is 141 children. There are current wait lists for both programs that fluctuate, but the most recent numbers that administration provided are presented on the screen. There's also a bus service contract that applies to both ELCC and SAS for children that require busing to and from school. At the bottom, we note that 15 to 20 children move from ELCC to SAS every year. So those children finishing up kindergarten right about now, who have been in ELCC for the year, many of them move over to SAS once they start grade 1. So there's a good chunk of kids that move every year between. Staff context, again, just a visual there's 16 full-time staff dedicated just to ELC, 4 full-time staff dedicated to just SAS, 1 supervisor, and 10 casual staff that support both programs. And as noted previously, staff turnover is quite low for the program. Here's where we start to introduce some numbers. So we also wanted to give the general revenue context, because the overall calculations that we get into are linked in the following slides between ELCC and SAS, but the revenue context is different between the two. So as I mentioned, the agreement limits the parent fees to $306.25 per month at ELCC. So that's for children ages kindergarten age and younger. The provincial agreement top-up of it's between that $739 and $1,127, depending on the child's age, because generally the younger children require more educators per child, so that cost is higher. But between those two revenue streams, that's primarily for ELCC. At SAS, parents pay fees of $600 per month during the school year and $825 per month over the summer because the hours are longer over the summer when kids aren't in school. Shared between the two, the bus service currently is charged at cost to parents. So there is no municipal subsidy for that service. There is also the provincial wage top-up, which applies to both ELCC and SAS. So those are all of the different places that dollars come in to the municipality through childcare services. We've got a note here just to say that children attend ELCC or SAS for roughly 8 to 10 years. Not every child will attend for that whole time. Every family is a bit different, but for the purposes of discussion, we're going to say about 8 to 10 years. So we did the math just over the course of a year. So with the current agreement for a parent for one child at ELCC, that costs $3,900 for one child. The total cost of that childcare at ELCC, depending on the age of the child, so this is the parent fees plus the provincial top-up, is almost $12,800, or ranges to $17,400 for scale. At the school age site at SAS, the parent cost for 1 year at SAS, that assumes a full year, summer and the school year, $7,650. And because there is no provincial agreement there, there's no other revenue that way. And for that roughly 8 to 10 years, the calculated cost of childcare for 5 years at ELC and 5 years at SAS is approximately just shy of $58,000 for one child. So if we're talking about revenue, that's what we're looking at. Provide some context on other child care providers in Beaumont. Currently, there are 14 other facility-based child care centers, as well as 34 licensed family day homes and others that are unlicensed, for a total of just over 2,000 spaces as determined or as taken from the Alberta Child Care Lookup tool just at the end of last week. So by the numbers, with 141 spaces, ELCC and SAS account for 6.9% of the total space availability in Beaumont. Also just some demographic information to give context. So 5,732, or 23% of the population, are children under the age of 14, with some of those demographics broken down below for you to see. Also wanted to share some operational highlights provided by administration. So there was a teacher strike this past fall for approximately 6 weeks, and which meant that for children in kindergarten, ELCC operated as full-day care during that time, and SAS operated as full-day care for all children who were enrolled in that program. Also, there was an expansion of ELCC through the Space Creation Grant, which added 10 spaces. And this was an action identified in the 2023 business plan that administration followed through on, because more spaces also generates more revenue. So there were some construction delays, which meant that the revenue generation from children enrolling was delayed. Planned opening of January 25 wasn't completed until April of 25. but all spots were filled by September of 2025. Okay, and now we get into the numbers and the calculation side of things. So when we are calculating the percent cost recovery, this is as identified by the current policy. So we've got an icon in the corner here, which indicates that the current cost recovery policy defines cost recovery is supposed to be at 80%, which excludes indirect costs. So the pie symbol represents when we're talking about 80% cost recovery. So note that this excludes rent and amortization as well as other indirect costs such as IT or HR. And this is as per the current policy definition. We got the information from administration, which was pulled from GL codes, so directly from accounting software, and all of the expenses that were coded to those specific codes, as well as the revenues that came in as well. This is the formula that we use to calculate the percent cost recovery and then the municipal subsidy. So when we did the math, we've also included the results from the 2018 Grant Thornton report, which looked at the 2017 numbers so that we can look back in history on what was calculated there. In 2017, the percent cost recovery, according to policy, was calculated at 71%. And based on the information provided from 23 to 25, the percent cost recovery is sitting more at 90 to 91%. So the total expenses has stayed relatively stable over time, and that's due to some internal efficiencies. Revenues has increased over that time. We understand that after the 2018 report, before the provincial agreement came into place, the city did increase some fees to parents, so that had an impact there as well. Also, more spaces were created. You're caring for more children, which generates more revenue, and the provincial agreement has also come into place during that time. So the municipal subsidy, as calculated as per policy, went from $345,000 as calculated in 2018 to approximately $180,000 now. So I should mention, the calculated percentages of cost recovery are for both ELCC and SAS together. So that's taking all the expenses together and all of the respective revenues together and completing that calculation. We did also complete the calculation separately for SAS and ELCC. So the blue bars show that combined cost recovery, which were the numbers presented on the previous slide. The yellow bars represent SAS cost recovery, and the green are ELCC cost recovery. Again, excluding those indirect costs as according to the policy. That dashed line across is what policy says. So based on that definition and the information provided, both ELCC and SAS have exceeded the policy in the last 3 years. So we also calculated cost recovery, including those indirect costs. So where you see that pizza with the extra slice in there, we're including these indirect costs. So that includes things like rent and amortization for the school-age site and ELCC. That also includes things like IT expenses, HR expenses, accounting, and other staff. As well as insurance. So there are more internal costs that are included in this version of calculation. So if we include those numbers, it does increase the total expenses overall, but the revenues do remain the same from the previous table. And that results in a percentage cost recovery, if we're including all of those indirect costs, of between 81 and 83% between 23 and 25. And this is ELC and SAS combined, once again. We haven't provided the numbers for 2017 as this wasn't directly reported in this way in 2018. So this same graph as well, but this is including those indirect costs. Cost recovery, we've put in the cost recovery policy there just to give that barometer on what you're looking at. Once again, blue is combined, SAS is yellow, and ELCC is green. So between the period of 2023 and 2025, when we included all costs, including indirect costs, SAS has exceeded policy where ELCC has not, is the distinction there. So beyond the numbers on what's been calculated kind of in the past, there are also some considerations for service delivery into the future as the city discusses childcare services. Eventually, some major renovations or capital replacement of the SAS building may need to be considered as the asset is aging. And the capacity at SAS is also at a maximum. So can't handle any more children according to regulation on allowable space per child. Once again, which has been a bit of a theme over the past several years, just uncertainty of the agreement with the province on what it will look like in the next year or the years following, as well as Beaumont being a mid-sized city with a rapidly growing population and demographic changes, and what that may do to childcare needs over the next little while. So that was our analysis of what is and what has been. These scenarios are intended for discussion purposes, and I'll mention some levers. Sometimes we'll suggest pulling one lever all the way, when in reality that's not necessarily how it could play out, but for the purposes of exploring the bounds of what's possible, we've pulled them all the way, and I'll illustrate what I mean by that when we get there. So the first scenario, status quo. You can choose to keep the cost recovery policy as is, and administration can continue exercising fiscal responsibility over direct costs, and look for grants for capital improvements as needed. Scenario 2, and at this point I do want to point out an error in our report that I noticed today, where we reported to so moving from 80% to 100% cost recovery, including indirect costs, equates to about $400,000. So that's the municipal subsidy if we're looking at all indirect costs. In the report, it states $340,000. I apologize, I did not update that with one of the last minute changes. So wanted to point out the error. It should read, as per this slide, at $400,000. So moving to achieve that $400,000, your overall levers are increase your revenue, decrease your expenses, or do a combination of some of those things. So some of those expense controls include a reduction in those direct costs. When we talk about potential revenue generation, your lever with the provincial agreement and parent fees is stuck. You can't move that one right now, according to the agreement. You can increase fees to apply to SAS. And in the report, we had stated that to get to that $340,000, that would require increasing monthly fees by another $600. In order to get to that $400,000, as stated here, it's more like $680 per child per month. Again, some of that uncertainty, the agreement for 2027, 2028, we don't know if the province may introduce a mechanism for changing of parent fees. We don't have that information at that point. You could also choose to increase enrollment at SAS, which would require larger square footage, and the SAS building is currently maxed at its potential capacity. Another lever, if you pulled it all the way, could be to exit the provincial agreement and charge that full cost to parents, where the city then has full autonomy over what the fees could be. Scenario 3 could be stop providing service by providing notice to close ELCC and SAS. Some considerations based on your agreement with the province, they require 30 days written notice, and some planned communications may be required with the community on this. Some expense implications could be developing a public information plan, also some workforce transition costs, some uncertainty in terms of variability in staffing levels and program enrollment during a transition period. You will still have expenses at the SAS facilities. You'll still have the building that needs heat and power and water, estimated at about $40,000 per year, and you will still retain some of those expenses for HR and accounting. Those won't go away. Scenario 4 is considering transferring service to an external provider. So it's to initiate moving responsibility for service provision outside of the city, which would require securing a partner to deliver that service collaboratively with the potential to transfer that responsibility over time. Some things affecting expense and revenue implications, particularly during the transition period, would be level of control or decision-making that the city wishes to retain. You'd have to develop a plan to retain service continuity and standards during that transition. Current unknown is the feasibility of transferring the existing childcare license as regulated by the province to a new partner, that as well as the provincial agreement, if that could be transferred to a new provider. And also confirming the location of the facility, whether or not a partner may want to move one or both of those locations. Ultimately, this scenario, you need to find a dance partner is probably one of the first steps to consider. So at a high level, those are potential options for the city to consider. So we'd like to suggest, and this is consistent with the previous reviews as well, the central question here is, given the childcare context of today in Beaumont, does the city want to continue providing municipally run childcare services, is the question to pose. This is one way you could choose to work through that discussion on a decision tree. So if the answer is yes, Beaumont wants to continue running those services, then the question becomes, is the current cost recovery policy acceptable? And then scenarios fall from that, either scenario 1 or 2 as discussed. If the answer to does the city want to continue providing those services is no, the next question is, should the services provided remain but administered by another entity? And if yes or no, different scenarios to work through. So this is not meant to be a prescriptive process for you to follow through, but just something to consider as you are discussing. Some of our recommendations, just following the report, is to lean on your council strategic plan to support you in decision-making. Administration has started this, but proactively engaging with the province to try to learn more about some of those potential changes to the agreement. Establish regular reporting to council about performance against the policy. We understand that there are regular updates about the program itself to council, but not necessarily the calculated financial performance against policy. And also, this might depend on where you land on the tree on the previous slide, but consider amending that deficit policy for clarity, as well as guidance on timelines for reviewing the policy, were just some things that came to mind. Thank you for the time, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you for the presentation, and that distilled quite a lengthy report down into a bunch of slides, and you presented it well, so thank you for that. Now we'll entertain, we'll try and go one question per person and just keep going around. If we figure out an issue before we move on, we'll deal with that then. But Councillor Murray, I'll start with yourself.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It's actually answered a fair number of questions. But I do wonder, in this report, you've talked about how we are maxed out in terms of space availability in those two buildings. And I guess this is actually maybe a bit more of a question for our administration. Have we ever done any considerations about splitting where the children are based on age categories? I know we already have, 2 age categories, but perhaps splitting it even further. Has that ever been something that it's a consideration?
Not sure who best from administration to tackle that one. Mr. Suter?
Thank you for the question. I can't honestly tell you if that has been considered in the past. I could be corrected on that. I think, for me, we would look at a strategy overall on that front rather than just deciding that in a vacuum. I think collectively, when we look at the both locations, we realize they're both in aging buildings. We know we're at capacity. So I think holistically, we would look at that, assuming we are still in the business in the future, to where are we going to go? Do we have to grow? How do we update or upgrade the facilities? Or do we go somewhere else? So those questions, I think, are all tied together, Councillor Murray. So I don't know that splitting them up is necessarily the answer to, it might affect your revenues in some way here or there, but I think it's more a question back to the central question here, as well as that would all flow from that decision, at whatever point we make that decision or that decision is made for us. We would look at a strategy around how best to deliver the service, knowing full well we have aging facilities that are at capacity.
Right.
All right, thank you for that. Mayor, we'll move on to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. So just wondering, you gave the fees for the parent fees. How does that compare to the other facilities that offer same services in terms of the fees? Is that pretty across the board? The parent fees?
Oh, yeah, it's red, we're good. Yeah. Okay. Through the chair to mayor, sorry, I'm just trying to find the slide so that we can all look at it together. So the fees for every child care provider that provides care for kindergarten and under, if they're participating in the provincial agreement, will be $326.25 across the board.
So if they're participating in the provincial agreement, and with, sorry, that's a secondary question.
Just keep going on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there a number of facilities that do not participate, or is there certain criteria to do that? Yeah.
So I don't know the exact number of which ones are participating or not in the city of Beaumont. We do know that the province has closed the program to any new private for-profit operators. And just recently, like in the past week or two, they've also said there's now going to be a limit on any new non-profit providers as well, just looking to kind of spread out the provincial program in the places that make sense. But specifically, how many providers in Beaumont access, sorry, I don't have that information.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with just a couple clarification pieces. I hope I can squish these into one. I'm referring to your report, Ms. Hopkins, on the pages of your report. I think it's 5, 6, 7, and 8, respectively. So just some numbers that were inconsistent as far as I could see, that I'm sure you'll be able to speak to and clarify. So the first one is a couple places we hear 14 commercial locations inside Beaumont, some 17. One number said 17, including R2 locations. Just want to get crystal clear on how many locations we have in Beaumont and why there's some drift in the report.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you're still on.
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, yes, thank you. There are some inconsistencies there. And I'll eyeball just at the back for nods. 14 providers other than ELCC and SAS. Well, 17 total. So it should be 15 other than ELCC and SAS is the absolute correct number.
So we're firm on the 17 number.
Yes,
Thank you.
So it's 15 plus 2.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. And that doesn't affect the seats, if I could describe them that way, for individual kids. That number is accurate throughout all the reporting.
That total capacity, let me find the slide here. The other way, apologize. I think it's 2,052.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that's from the Alberta Child Care Lookup Tool last accessed last week, because those numbers do change occasionally as well.
Okay, and I think you'll be able to give the context to this, but in your historical review, you referenced the 2017 Grant Thornton review, and there's two different numbers that come out of their historic cost recovery that when it sort of rolls through to the subsidy amount, one is 609,634 and the other is 345,338.
Yes.
Can you speak to that difference?
Yes, so up here on the slide, this is the 609,634. This is to include all of those indirect costs for the municipal subsidy, whereas the 345,338 was as per council policy, which excludes those indirect costs.
Perfect. That's what I thought, given what you'd done in other places. I just wanted that to be crystal clear. Just want everybody to be, to have faith in the numbers that we have, so we're all in agreement that.
Yeah, good thought process. Councillor Colesmith.
Thank you, Chair. We mentioned that the school-age site is due for replacement in the next X number of years. Is that on a capital plan anywhere? Like, do we have that, is that forecasted?
Through the chair to Councillor Colesmith, I believe it's forecast in one of the programs that infrastructure has for facility renewal. I can't speak offhand to what year, but I can try to look that up.
I'd appreciate that, thank you.
Councillor Hyde, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much, Ms. Hopkins, for that detailed report. I think it was very forward-focused and everybody could understand it. You mentioned 77 children on the wait list. Were those children intergenerational children wanting to come on to the same facility, or were those new children to the system, and have they sought placement other than here? You're on.
Yeah, I'm eyeballing staff at the back. So what I can offer, the wait list of 77 at the early learning childcare is probably, and I'm making an assumption here, it's mostly children coming in new. I'd have to check with administration. The wait list of 12 at the school age site, because I know we've stated right below that the 15 to 20 children move from ELCC to SAS every year, whether or not that includes those children, or if that rough number, because probably right now in June is about the time when parents are sorting that out. So I don't have a straight answer for you, unfortunately, in terms of how many are moving from ELCC to SAS, or how many of those on the wait list at SAS didn't previously attend ELCC. But I would look maybe to administration if they have that.
Yeah, and even if admin doesn't have those numbers yet, I think, Councillor Hyde, it's a good question to ask, right? You know, is it other family members coming in? Is it new folks, or what it is? So, yeah.
Correct, yeah. I'm just looking at the dynamics of it, right? I mean, everybody here is very passionate about their children coming through there, and of course, some people have mentioned that they have new children that want to go through the system, and so that's where I'm going with this question is, are they wanting to do this system specifically, or is there not enough room for them to go somewhere else? Sort of an idea. That's what I'm looking at, and just finding that, so.
Yeah, maybe we'll get back to the answer on that after, but I think admin here's that one. I'm going to follow the order on the list here, which brings me back to Councillor Penrod.
Thank you. I got lots of questions. I just wasn't expecting to be up next, so I got to pick here. I'll just start from the top. So feel free to speak to this, but I think it's probably aimed at our economic development department. What do we know about childcare wait lists? This is sort of further to Councillor Hyde's question, across the city and other providers. And what kind of data do we have about proposed new childcare services expected to come on stream over the next year? And I'll leave it at that, just to get a broader picture of the market demand in Beaumont for childcare spaces.
I think we'll pass that on to Active. Your mic's on.
Thank you for the question. So we don't have the available spaces for every daycare. Council's been with us on some business visits where we've heard anecdotally that there is still quite a bit of capacity in some of our newer commercial builds. We do also have a large number coming online in the next 18 months. So there are some larger footprinted commercial daycares that are currently proposed in signing lease deals within the city. So capacity will continue to increase over the next year, but we don't hear a lot about wait lists. We hear that there is still capacity, at least in our commercial locations. I couldn't speak for the day homes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cole-Smith, and then followed by the mayor.
Thank you. Throughout the report and in the scenarios, it was very much both the ELC and the SAS combined. And you mentioned there is some operational intertwinedness. Is there anything structural as far as how they're set up, you know, with geocodes, accounting, or is it strictly operational that kind of links those two together?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair to Councillor Cole-Smith. So structurally, and again, I'm flipping through my slides here, the way that the expenses are coded, they are separate for SAS and separate for ELCC. And I believe there's some splitting of how salaries are tracked with those shared resources between those two.
Sticking to the one question, I'll move on.
There would be some latitude if you have like, yeah. Mayor.
Thank you. I think my questions have been answered, but just to clarify for the record, so the 2,052 is just spaces that are capacity. It doesn't mean that all those spaces are available.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, we don't know how many of those spaces are vacant.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's so the 2,052 is the total number of licensed spaces. So if every childcare facility in the city was full, that would be the number of children.
And that's of June 2026?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up we have Councillor Hyde, followed by, sorry, I'm running the seat map here, followed by Councillor Penrod.
So this question is probably going to go back to Deb again. Sorry, I got to pick on you one more time. Seeing as the municipal model, there has to be an influx come in from the government level. How is this a viable business for private enterprise?
That would likely be a question for later on.
Okay. Yep, just thought I'd throw it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just keep track of that question, and if and when we get into closed, we'll revisit that. Thank you. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Hopkins, did I catch, is it Mr. Sims? Timms, pardon me. I feel bad for Mr. Timms. Should he get to speak, or? I just wondered if you could scroll to the beginning of your presentation. You had a beautiful chart for us on service levels and amount of population served and cost of those services. Thank you. So this is why we're here tonight. I just wondered if you could speak to, and I'm not sure if you were involved in creating this chart initially. I know it was Urban that did it for us. Just wondering if you can speak to, does the chart take into account both operational and capital costs?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, that is a very good question. I would have to go back and confirm, but remembering, I think the way that childcare was considered here, it was primarily operational costs.
Yeah, so that would be, I think, an answer that I'd be really glad to have very clear for everyone, and maybe even more broadly, some of the basic methodology that went into preparing this report and the chart that reveals it. I'm happy to go back and look at the original report and dig through that too, but maybe that's something, some direction that we could have for our administration just to help us clarify or review that methodology.
Sounds good. Thank you. We'll move over to Councillor Colesmith.
Mr. Chair, this is Jay Bohachik, Director of Finance, online. This is in response to answer Councillor Penrod's question. So the financial information that we provided was purely operations as far as cost recovery from an operations perspective. The capital elements are separate, and we do have those numbers as well for consideration as far as what's in the plan in the 10-year window. But just for the dollar values that were provided as far to the basis for the analysis was just the operating costs.
Yep, please.
Subsequent, so to continue with the capital answer, sorry, since I'm hogging the line, I might as well answer two questions at once. The capital plan, as it was presented last year, had ELCC renewal, $30,000 set in 2029 and $200,000 set in 34, as well as there's $165,000 set in 2029 for the playground for the daycare, and then the SAS site had $70,000 in 2030. Now, I'm comfortable giving those numbers out at this point because it's well in advance of budget approval, and we will be updating them through the year, so it's not tipping hands or eliminating procurement advantage. So just for context of why we're sharing those costs out in public.
Yeah, Councillor Penrod, you can clarify.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for jumping in, Mr. Bohachuk. Just wanted to clarify, so you said operational costs are what drove, we were specifically talking about childcare. Can I just clarify that the same methodology was used for all of the different services that are listed in the chart?
So if I may just respond to some of that clarification. So the numbers that were provided for this analysis that we're talking about and reviewing today were just operational. For the level of service inventory work, we would have to go back and just confirm whether or not that represented operational and capital dollars. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Colesmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any more detailed information about the other childcare service providers and do they offer services with the similar age splits as we have with these sites? And is the demand similar at those to ours? Do we have any of that information?
Through the chair to Councillor Colesmith, that was not part of our analysis at this time.
I was maybe looking to, I guess it would be ECDev, if maybe they know this is probably an unfair question, but do we have any sense of what age ranges the new service providers or the other service providers offer?
Thank you for the question. Again, we haven't surveyed all service providers, but through our business visits, we do understand that other providers do have the age ranges as well.
Thank you.
Sounds good. That brings us back to Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question, in the report, we haven't really discussed if there is another municipality that is doing a similar service across the province, and if so, what can you tell us about that in comparison? Have we looked and seen where they may have, eliminated some costs or that sort of thing?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Through the chair to Councillor Murray. As part of the scope of this exercise, we did not reach out to any other municipally provided childcare. In some of the previous reports, there were some descriptions of others. Municipality of Jasper comes to mind as one. I'm not sure if it still operates today, but in previous, I think there were a handful. There were about 3 or 4 across the province that have provided that.
Does administration have any insight on that? Okay.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are aware of the operation in Drayton Valley, municipality of Drayton Valley, which has a population of about 8,000. Jasper with a population of 4,700. And the MD of opportunity number 17, which would be up Slave Lake area, has a population of about 3,500. All operating in different sort of models when I'm looking at the notes here, but as you can see, it's not that common in the landscape.
Is that good?
Well, I have another question.
Is it that same stream?
No.
Okay, well, we'll try and follow the rules.
Okay.
Back to, we have seat 16 next, which is Councillor Colesmith. Once I turn you on, sorry, I got the windows switched. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the numbers in the table with the various years, I think it was said that came from the general ledgers from the accounting software. So I guess my question, if we were to want to do similar reporting, for 2026, do we have to wait for a whole nother report to come, or is this something we can generate on our own?
So through the chair to Councillor Colesmith, as part of our scope of work, we created the Excel model and left blanks for administration to fill out for next time, and walked them through all of the different inputs and how it works.
So somebody with a little know-how and that software could pull the GL codes and tally it up? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Penrod, you're up.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is my last basic question, and it is pretty basic because it's one I've been wondering about for a while on a few fronts. For Mr. Bohacek, why does the city charge itself rent? So why is rent part of I'm sure there's a good accounting reason, and I'm sure you can tell it to us, but why does the city charge ourselves rent, and why are we selective in this?
So through the chair to Councillor Penrod, so it's a practice, and we do this similarly for the library as well. So because it's a separate accounting entity, the library, and we get grant dollars, and it's incorporated into, so it's the cost of what it would be equivocally someplace else. The fact that we're leveraging existing space would not be a normative behavior, and so you would need to account for that in proper cost from that perspective. So it's largely an accounting exercise, and it is just to properly reflect the cost of service.
And maybe I'll restate the second part. Is that process consistent across selective?
So we don't charge rent, say, for operations or, for example, we're not receiving dollars for those, right? So there is no external body that's providing us funds. So that would just be a endless loop of just charging ourselves for no reason whatsoever. But because there is a third party involved with grant dollars involved, so to properly cost out what the service delivery is appropriate.
Thank you.
Well, before I go, Mr. Councillor Penrod, there was just the other question about the operating costs on the service level review, and it is just the operating costs. So there is no capital in the service level review calculations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Suter, I see you were still on.
To add a little bit more context on the question that Christina answered regarding the modeling, the financial modeling. So that Urban Systems worked in alignment with our financial department on that to go through it, make sure the accuracy was there. We did a deep dive into those indirect costs, I think, better than we may have done in the past. So I am very confident that what you see is fully captured here. There is nuanced arguments around what Mr. Bajic has talked about with the rent piece and maybe some other pieces, but suffice to say, what was built for us with Urban Systems is something we're going to use going forward, and it can be more accurately reported in the future using that tool.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's great. Just going to do a last look here for any questions from council, and not seeing any right now. So what I would suggest now is that we look to move in camera and speak with administration so they can provide some more information on a couple of issues that I think will provide some color to some of the questions that I'm hearing folks leading toward. So just looking to Ledge Services on some advice on timing. Shall we take a break and recess and come back, or shall we motion to go in camera first? What do you think procedurally would be the best?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we would recommend doing a motion to go into closed session, and then we may take a recess.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll take that recommendation. So at this time, I would look for a committee member to motion council to move into closed session. Mayor, thank you. Just wait. Put up. Put up.
That the Committee of the Whole move into closed session at 6:37 p.m. pursuant to the Access to Information Act, Sections 29 and 30.
Thank you for that, Mayor. And just for those in the room to add some color to that. So what closed session is it's a time where administration and council work together without the public present to review sensitive items pursuant to those sections up there. So we would, as part of this, that would mean that everyone moves out, and it's an uncomfortable ask, but that's just what the process is. So I anticipate we would come back out of closed session, but I can't guess what that timing would be for everyone tonight. So that being said, call the question, please. And that passes 6-0, and we'll move into closed session and get the room reset here. Thank you very much.
Different experience. I need